Hi, my name is Robert Hansen, and I will be doing another reading of my writing. How I Found God, in quotations, aka the architects of the system and the founders of my garbage psychology. Imagine this. The year is 2015, and I finally came home from Afghanistan after working as a contractor there for nearly 2 years. I had paid off more than $100,000 of school debt and managed to save nearly $50,000. Being exhausted from my 80-hour, 7 days a week work week, I decided to get some much-needed rest. After 6 months at home, I finally decided to look for work. About 3 weeks later, I received a very strong offer of employment. This employment opportunity would take me to the United Kingdom. Additionally, the pay was very good. This was a highly sought-out position, so I considered myself to be very fortunate. Once I accepted the offer, I sent all my belongings, including my car, across the globe to the United Kingdom and left the US as soon as I could. For my first year on the job, I mostly kept a low profile at work as I was mainly interested in learning as much about the job as I could. I was fortunate enough to be seated next to one of the senior-most analysts in the workplace. He had been there for more than 20 years, was a treasure trove of information, and did not mind me asking questions no matter the quantity or even the quality. But after that first year, I began seriously looking for promotion opportunities within my workplace after the section leader left. So, I increased my productivity significantly, and I began getting noticed at work for it. This provided the necessary backdrop for the architects of the system, aka founders of my garbage psychology. For the viewers who are watching this video, I have dissociative identity disorder. I have multiple personalities. I have garbage personalities. They are a set of child personalities with God complexes. They believe they should be able to do whatever they want without any consequences. The architects of the system is the leadership of these garbage personalities. After maintaining a very low profile for decades, the stage was now set to implement their plans of takeover of the main personality and other personalities. I stated and thought about this statement greatly over the years. If there ever were a series of events which I couldn't explain away, then I would reopen the matter regarding my belief regarding the existence of God. This meant that barring something major, I would not be revisiting the issue. I was an atheist then, but many strange occurrences such as miracles and oddities have challenged this position since then. These oddities have changed me. They, the architects of the system, have changed me. So what happened? The first of such oddities took place in January of 2017. The architects, posing as God, wanted to show me my potential, and in an effort of doing this, I greatly increased my productivity and was giving my employers much better insights. All of a sudden, I got access to resources in my brain which had never happened before in my life. Even for employees there, they had never seen the kind of numbers I was producing. As I was producing more, I became the center of attention. Essays, which I wrote and sat unused on their hard drives for months, all of a sudden became very important, and many were asking me for answers to questions. Something in me was awoken. So why would the architects of the system, aka God in quotations, want to show me my potential? First, it was part of a very elaborate plot developed years previously for the main personality to find God or develop a belief in God. They began implementing their plans of takeover of the main personality by posing as God. Second, they were trying to show me my potential because they wanted me to serve as a prophet, but more specifically, as a writer. They told me I was to be one of the greatest writers in the world, who would be instrumental in uniting the major world religions. They told me that each religion had a piece of different truths, which when one gained a deep understanding of all the major religions, the different pieces would fit together like a puzzle. They also told me that several thousand years ago, the religions were fine as they were then. But like all things, humanity must progress. I would be an instrumental part of this progression to move humanity along. To show me my potential, the level of productivity I was outputting, and the type of insights I offered my employers, was to show me I was qualified for this undertaking, or calling, as they preferred me to refer to it. There is more. There were other very strange occurrences, for which, as of today, I still don't have any explanations. For example, one day when I went to work, I spoke with the senior-most analyst, the one who had previously mentored me, as I always did, and I could hardly believe my eyes. It was as though he was dumbed down. He was unable to do basic things, and they were tasks which he always was able to do in the past. This was just the first of many things to come on my journey to discover God. Now approaching May and June of 2017, everything which could go wrong in my life did go wrong. There are parts I attribute to the illness, and other parts for which, again, I have no explanation. The architects of the system, or game, aka the founders of my garbage psychology, managed to set up a system through which they could control the main personality, including all the other personalities. As their plans were unfolding in the beginning of 2017, their focus centered around ensuring that the main personality and other personalities developed a belief in God, and once they had that, they would then try to solidify that belief. Again, the original setup was for me and other personalities to serve as a prophet and them as God. This provided the ideal conditions that would later serve as a backdrop for countless battle scenarios between me and us as a prophet and them as God. I explained these exact scenarios in the video called I, the Prophet, in quotations, against God, in quotations, aka the architects, the founders of my garbage psychology. It's also important to note that as time progressed, they quickly buried the main personality with more naive and gullible personalities. So how did the architects further manage to get me to find God? They terrorized me, impressed me, and buried me with other personalities. One of the first things to go when my life was falling apart in those last few months, before I was committed to a mental health hospital, was my car. One day, in the middle of June of 2017, I got ready for work as I always did. I went outside to start my car, and it wouldn't turn over no matter how hard I tried. I later flagged down 3 motorists for a jump start, but there still was no luck with starting my car. Afterwards, I went to 3 separate rental car places, but the first 2 were out of cars. That day, I was also forced to tow my car to a mechanic. After discussing the problem with the mechanic, he told me he didn't have the part, and he would have to have it shipped from the United States. My car would have to sit there for weeks. Everything which could go wrong in the months of May and June of 2017 did go wrong. Next to go was my debit card. Imagine living in a foreign country and the main debit or credit card, which you have always used, was canceled, no longer allowing you to access your funds. This is what happened to me. My bank out of nowhere closed my card due to fraud concerns, and it took 2 weeks for them to send a new card to me. My other credit card was also closed due to missed payments. I believe the architects intentionally also did this. Fortunately, after a half of a day of anxiety due to wondering how I would pay my bills with no access to my money, I remembered I had a bunch of checks. So I was able to cash them at the Post Exchange, a retail store for military members, contractors, and their families, to get a few $100s or pounds per check cashed. The next shoe to drop in my life was getting kicked out of my apartment. Over the first half of 2017, I put everything I had into work to the point of everything else in my life being in decline. My apartment was no exception, as it remained disgusting and a complete mess. There was rotten food everywhere, and even plants were growing in the sink. I believe I didn't notice how bad the apartment, due to the architects and my garbage psychology, Under their system, they were able to greatly influence what I see and hear. This included managing my reactions to the various problems arising in my life. In the United Kingdom, the landlord is able to conduct surprise inspections to ensure your apartment remains clean and the tenant isn't breaking any laws. In early June, such an inspection was conducted. My landlord gave me a 30-day notice to vacate the premises. This has never happened in my life. As the months approached June of 2017, it became even harder to socialize. I used to come home from work and be so exhausted that it was very difficult to get out of my apartment. Relationships, which were too difficult to maintain, ended. I stopped calling and returning the phone calls and text messages of friends with whom I had known for years and was always able to stay in contact. Over the months, I became more and more isolated. I believe this was done intentionally by the architects of this system and my garbage psychology for planned events in July. Those events will be discussed in another video. Finally, in the middle to late May, my health took another hit. Again, due to my productivity and the quality of my insights, I was getting noticed at work. One such morning in May, there were 3 assignments from some of the high-ranking military employees. I was also invited to meet with the colonel, the official in charge of the entire organization, that morning. The assignments would normally be divided evenly among the team of 3 analysts. However, one analyst was getting his house renovated, and the other analyst had a family emergency. Everything that morning fell on me. I believe that due to the anxiety and actions from the architects, I was unable to finish the assignments. My manager that morning kept on checking the status of those assignments every 15 to 20 minutes. My anxiety increased that much more until I could feel my head split open, followed with a large crunching sound. At that moment, I had suffered a nervous breakdown. I left my workplace due to the stress and did not return for 3 hours, with many in management simply brushing off the incident as someone calling me a name or being mean to me. My work performance collapsed after this. I never was able to return to producing at those levels ever again. Additionally, the architects were not finished with me. The architect system is able to highly manipulate the thoughts of all the other personalities, including the main personality. Or they can just block thoughts altogether. They did this over a period of weeks. What was the result of this? The architects had me convinced that I was unable to analyze, that I was unable to do my job. All my life, I have always taken pride in my focus and analytical skills, and for the first time in my life, it was taken away from me. They took it away from me. I thought I was damaged from the nervous breakdown for weeks. Around this period of time, I was still dealing with my car problems. This forced me to take taxis everywhere before I got a rental car. I have chatted with taxi drivers, but nothing like what was about to transpire. Earlier, I had spoken with the mechanic, and he gave me the bad news of having to order the part from the States. My car would be out of commission for weeks. On the ride home, I didn't say very much to the taxi driver as I was focused on the utter ruin of my life. But he had a lot to say to me. He suddenly became very charismatic and delivered a very inspirational speech. It was the type of make lemonade from lemons type of speech. And it came out of nowhere. He executed it perfectly, and it applied to my life in very direct ways. Due to his words at that exact moment of time, and in light of all the other strangeness in my life, I became convinced that God, or the set of gods, were talking to me through the taxi driver. It was as though God was telling me exactly what I needed to hear at that moment. Again, I have never had a conversation like that with a taxi driver ever in my life, or with anyone else for that matter. This kept my spirits up for days. Every day when I was either being groomed for being a prophet, in quotations, or when I supposedly was one, which in retrospect, I state unequivocally, I neither was a prophet then, nor am I one now. the strange and bizarre would take place. These type of oddities don't seem to happen very often anymore in my life. I can attribute some of this to the illness and others, still as of today, I have no explanation. With me having sufficiently found God, aka the architects, the stage was now set for what was supposed to be the most important conversation of my life. A conversation with the Angel Gabriel. Except in reflecting back on that day now, it wasn't Angel Gabriel. It was just the architects and founders of my garbage psychology, and yet another one of many lies to come. Before that day, I hadn't ever heard of Angel Gabriel because I wasn't religious, but he apparently knew me. Again, a part of the architect's system and a large component of the then future games involved highly manipulating thoughts and planting thoughts at just the right time. The style of how they planted thoughts made it appear to me and the other personalities as though they were godlike. The day of the conversation to come, I got the idea to go out and drink a beer. I felt as though I had a choice, but in retrospect, I didn't. This was part of their system, their game. Earlier that day, the conversation wasn't taking place yet, but I was being guided. In my mind, I was receiving commands such as go straight, turn right at this corner, and stop. I followed these commands into the downtown area until I walked into a bar and restaurant. I sat down in an upstairs area away from people. At this point, the architects, pretending to be Angel Gabriel, revealed himself to me. He told me not to speak, to stay calm, and at this point, I could begin asking him questions. I asked him about heaven, immortality, and even my life. By the end of the conversation, some of his plans were revealed to me. He stated to not worry about the calamities which have befallen me, because the idea was to remove me from my old life and place me into a new life. After the conversation, he left. The impression left behind on me was that this was the clearest conversation I have ever had with myself. Perhaps I wasn't completely convinced. Honestly, I did not know what to think, but my belief in God, aka the architects, was strong enough apparently for the Angel Gabriel to reveal himself. However, I want to be very clear about this to my audience. I was not actually talking to Angel Gabriel. This was part of an elaborate ruse by the architects of the system to finally take over the main personality and other personalities. I wasn't speaking to Angel Gabriel, but to another personality. That's it. This is my life, this is the disorder, and a rather nasty disorder it is. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, or subscribe. Thank you. Thank you.